Hello and welcome to the Hawks Nest Behind Enemy Lines, our weekly show. We go and reach out with an insider, content creator like myself, does the equivalency of what I do out here on their end of it there with the team that we're about to face. Got a tough matchup on deck. We got a guy who's been very kind to take some time out of his day here, busy schedule. These folks are running, folks. JR, my guy from Pound to Pound, Atlanta. I've got a link just before I say hi to you, JR. I like to tell my folks as they walk in, link down in the description section directly to JR's channel. So, this is how we do. We're very kind to these folks. So they're taking free time out of their day. They're running a 100-hour week. So they're doing this for us. Let's do this for them as we do. Sub up to them. Doesn't cost you anything. Helps them out tremendously. And I'd really appreciate it on that side. JR, how you doing, my brother?
Man, I'm doing pretty good. Coming off of a 3-game stretch for us where we've done well to beat our division, like the first stretch of our division. So something we're not used to down here in Atlanta, at least the past few years. So it's kind of a different experience.
Well, it is kind of coming together for you guys. And I think, before we get to really where the current state of the team is, I'd be remiss if I didn't backtrack just a little bit because of so much of the change that was undertaken this offseason with your team. And I'd love to get where your thoughts are, I guess, if you can, both on time of hire and then where you stand now on both kind of the two hires the hiring of the new coach, and then, of course, the signing of kind of Cousins, which both are kind of decisions that you could, I think, make at the time arguments pro and for against.
Oh, for sure, on both those decisions. Like I was, at least at the very beginning, I was a pro Arthur Smith guy, because we had come off of years of not having a good run game, didn't really seem to be very physical, and Arthur Smith that was kind of his calling card, especially up in Tennessee with Derrick Henry. So, but we see how the past 3 years went. Like he never was able to solidify the QB room. After his first year, they shipped Matt Ryan out. We got caught up in the Deshaun Watson debacle, which I'm glad Cleveland stepped in at the last minute and
We all
uh,
are.
yeah, and took that bullet for us. But after third year, they make the decision to move on from Smith, and you start the coaching search, right? And you get the all the names involved. Seems like we're heavily involved in the Bill Belichick, which I was not a big fan of,
Hmm.
because I don't know. I just felt like that was going to be going in the like backwards as far as like schematically and things of that nature. Finally land on Raheem Morris, which I was actually kind of glad of because he had been here before in Atlanta with Dan Quinn, and he seemed like a guy who, coaching wise, was more of a CEO style coach.
Hmm.
Not necessarily being brought here because of his scheme, right?
Hmm. Okay.
And so now, granted, don't get me wrong, they're playing the same kind of defense they did in LA. So Jimmy Lake was out there with him. He brought a lot of guys from LA over, um, and but it doesn't seem like, I mean, he has a wide background as far as different coaching staffs that he's been a part of over the years, and very, very like highly spoken of from the league. I mean, a clip just came across about from Michael Bennett, who I know y'all are familiar with,
Hmm.
talking about if it wasn't for Raheem Morris, like he probably wouldn't have had the chances that he had, because Raheem down in Tampa gave him a chance to be a starter.
Hmm.
So people wise, it sounds like Raheem is a really good coach. The players absolutely love him from what we have heard and seen so far. Then you get into the interesting things of, okay, all season starts. Let's sign Kirk Cousins. Um, pay him $180 million for 4 years, 90 million of it guaranteed. So it's essentially a 2-year, $90 million deal with team options. So you do that. I'm like, okay, cool, fine. I get it. You've been 2 years without a stable QB. So you weren't going to do that again, right?
Hmm.
But then you do the still questioned, even by our fan base and by obviously the national media, you do the crazy thing of drafting Michael Penix in the first round.
Hmm.
Which I know y'all are familiar with him being up there in Washington. But it's like it's almost in a sense of, I felt like, at least at the time, drafting scared, in a sense of, we don't want to not, like, if this don't work out with Cousins or what have you. Like, there was a lot of oddball things. Now, granted, 6 games in, we like, nobody's talking about Penix because we're 4-2. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
But it could easily been a lot worse, and uh like, we would have been, it would all have been about, like, okay, well, when is Penix going to start? So that's still being, like, hotly debated down here in Georgia.
From my perspective, and I'll tell you, I'm on my own little tiny island on this one. So and it's not necessarily for just the pure love of Penix. I liked him a lot as a prospect. I thought that's a great selection, but it's not that I thought he was like the best the QB you guys got in that way. But I love the approach, and my reasoning is this. And let's see if you're buying this. I could see the Packers a couple of times through their run there with Rodgers at the end, and I could say, there was a go forward move. There was essentially a high first round pick, if you want to quantify it through free agency or through actually the jumping up in the draft and moving up out of their process to go get a guy where they were just short in some of those games of getting to a Super Bowl. And then who knows what happens there. When I looked at your Falcon roster, I think you're Super Bowl potentially capable with a Cousins, but I don't know if I applied that same kind of deal to it. And when you saw what happened to the Jets when they lost Rodgers after the year, and that potential that could also loom over the top, where this guy is as old as he is, a non-contact injury, he's out. You want your whole year gone at that point. I kind of liked the way that that balance went more to Penix. And I know I'm alone on this one, JR. I'm trying to sell you on it a little bit to it, but that was my take on it.
It's not like I think it would have been like an easier pill to swallow had, like, the Rodgers deal, had Cousins been here. Does that make sense? Like, you go out and you sign Cousins and you sign him to a 4-year deal. So that says, that, okay, I believe in this guy. He's going to be here for 4 years. And then you turn around on draft night. Now, to be completely honest, without much of a, like, proof per se, but I've got a good strong feeling that Terry Fontenot, our GM, wanted to be at that podium the first night with Michael Penix and a pass rusher, because they tried multiple times to move up back into the first round to get like a Jared Verse or a Latu or a Dallas Turner. Nobody was budging, nobody was moving, so they didn't do it. So um, that, to me, that's how I think they wanted that first round to go.
Yeah.
Obviously, it didn't. But I liked Penix as a prospect. Coming out of Washington, I didn't think he was on the same level necessarily as Caleb Williams or Drake May, but he was definitely that next tier down. So I'm not upset with, like, by no means am I upset with the pick. And like you said, Kirk Cousins is a little older. If he does end up going down, you're not completely out of it.
Yeah.
But that's where I get the idea of drafting scared. If that's what you're worried about, like, if we're making moves in the first round on a just in case this guy that we just signed gets hurt, that's where I have that it's an interesting way to build a team, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely where we probably find common ground where we go, well, giving $180 million to a guy coming off an Achilles injury in his mid-30s, maybe we can
Right.
have some discussions on that one as far as that first point of that process. But if you're going to do this, then that's also my point would be mine, which is we're hearing, if you have him in house, the one thing is with that, then he's been under a year under contract. He sees you make that pick and he's like, now you need to trade me. I'm not going to have this guy heating me up from the back and putting that verse. You just signed him and you can't come back to him. Hey, we're not eating that bonus money the first year. You got to sit through this. You can't play that game with us. So, it's 1-2. I think that they either will look brilliant or dumb, right? So if that situation happens, like I just talked about the Packers, where you guys get deep in the playoffs, but you're down that pass rusher who could have gotten you through, then it looks horrible. But if he does go down and you don't miss a beat with Penix, say nothing, and maybe even get more explosive potentially down that point, because I think the talent fits nicely too with him. That was the other part about you guys making that pick there, is that Drake London, great contested catcher. Kyle Pitts, pretty good contested catcher. Last year, what you saw with Penix, among other things he brings that's good to the field, is a really great adeptness in throwing those contested catch balls in just the right spots for those guys to go up and make a play.
Yeah, his accuracy is definitely something that like stood out. My biggest concern, at least through the pre-draft process, was he wasn't big on working the middle of the field. And so obviously, you're sitting behind Kirk Cousins, you're watching what he's doing, you're learning from him, and so you're really hoping that you're going to recreate the uh, Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love situation, the Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes, situation. Not necessarily throw these guys into the fire like we're seeing this year. I mean, it was until this game out in London where Caleb Williams finally was looking like he was worth that first overall pick.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm a big pusher on this. Is I don't like the modern process to quarterbacks. I call it the throw them at the deep end, throw the babies in the deep end, and if they don't swim, just go get another. And
Right.
versus taking that time, because there's been such a great success rate of players that have sat and be it 1 year to 3 years and had that time to really learn it. And that there's everyone likes to say the opposite here, JR, don't they? I mean, the common thought process here, you got to start them out, you draft
Oh
them, you
yeah.
got to see what you got. And like, no, you don't really got to do that.
I mean,
You can let it sit for a little bit.
look at the draft class of Trevor Lawrence. That was
Mhm.
supposed to be I messed with some of the friends on like Twitter and stuff quite a bit. That was supposed to be the QB class to end all classes. You had Lawrence and Zach Wilson and Trey Lance and Justin Fields, and none of those guys have looked good. Like it
Yeah.
has consistently looked good. I know Trevor Lawrence got paid, but that's the Jags. They do crazy things, such as that. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, like there's always more QBs coming out, and with the rookie salary cap the way it is constructed, to where exactly how much you're paying them, it's made them a lot more throwaway.
It has, but I do think your Falcons on this one are the key with me on Penix is health wise. Can he hold up? But I think you guys this is going to pay off for you guys long term. And that the patience process, you mentioned Rodgers, even Brady himself had to wait a year before he played. And he highly advocates for that, letting the quarterback sit and giving them a year to let the roots set, so to speak.
Right. Yep. Agreed.
Well, let's pivot a little bit more to some of the success you guys have had, because the Cousins move is paying off. He is throwing the ball really well. You guys are scoring a lot of points. He's got a weird thing still where it does look at times on some of those throws to that back foot where that thing's coming up off the ground, where it seemed like sometimes prior years it'd be fully planted. I don't know if he's still there's a slight favoring there, but there's sometimes with it where that foot comes off on some of those throws where you're like, is he okay? Is he on it? But he's slinging it.
Oh yeah.
He's making it work. So where are things at with this team right now, and kind of big picture standpoint of how it's working out?
Well, big picture standpoint is something I try to remind our listeners, our fan base, is that this week we'll make Game 7 of a brand new OC who has never called plays before in the NFL. So you're seeing like a weekly like maturation process of not just Cousins getting back to being healthy, but the connection between Cousins and London, Cousins and Pitts, like the confidence of like calling these plays. Like the first few weeks, it was Darnell Mooney and Ray McLeod. We joked that our number 1 and number 2 wide receiver was Darnell Mooney and Ray McLeod.
Now you draw it up.
Yeah, right. It's like that's how we all saw it happening. And then really on that game-winning drive in Philly, you really saw the connection start to develop with Drake London and Kyle Pitts, and then you like fast forward to the Thursday night game against the Bucks, where Kirk Cousins throws for a franchise leading 509 yards, in a night. So, which was hilarious because that night they were inducting Matt Ryan into the Ring of Honor. So on the night they're inducting him in the Ring of Honor, Kirk Cousins breaks his record. So that was comical.
A little bittersweet for Matt.
Yeah, right. And I'm sure Matt would love to see it broken because that means the team's doing well. But yeah, like the passing game is becoming definitely more consistent, and you're starting to see more of that trust and that connection being built, especially with a guy like Drake London. Like you can see Kirk Cousins looking for him on the contested catch routes, especially down there towards the end zone. Like Darnell Mooney is, I think, like 45 yards away from eclipsing his career bests from his Um, well, I think he had over 1,000 yards in Chicago. It was 45 yards away from something. I can't. I'm blanking on that stat right now. Apologize.
Might be like 500 yards receiving or something because he's had a couple big pop off days, I think.
Mm-hmm. But the run game has really come to life the past couple weeks, which is, we've invested a lot in Bijan Robinson, and you still have Tyler Algier out there, who is very hard to tackle and bring down. I think he's on his like second or third angry run from Kyle Brandon in the Good Morning Football. So the run game has started to come alive, especially did this past week against Carolina with over, clipsing over 200 yards rushing. So that's the first time we've done that in a while.
A lot of outside zone too, right? In what you guys are running, where it's a lot of attack to the edges.
Well, the deal is like that's the foundation that Arthur Smith built when he came here, was outside zone. We still kept the offensive line coach, Dwayne Ledford, and then promoted him to also be run game coordinator. So a lot of those ideals they didn't necessarily want to go away from. So you're still seeing a lot of stretch zone, a lot of outside zone, but they're starting to mix it up some and not be as predictable as they were at the beginning of the season. They're throwing in their like tendency breakers, adding things in. I don't know if you've seen it highlighted, but like they have a play against Carolina where our blocking tight end Charlie Warner went into motion, and it was a short motion, and like basically not blindside, but
wham
block. Yeah, wham block the 3-tech, and then was able to climb up to the second level. And so that was a new little wrinkle that we haven't seen yet. And so you're starting to see a few little counter runs from Algier. My biggest concern right now is more predictable on like Algier is going to go up the middle, or not necessarily up the middle, but Algier's more the inside, where Bijan, they tend to run him on the outside. Like, so they have to be able to start breaking those tendencies, because if me sitting here in my, office can see that, people who are paid millions of dollars to break it down can definitely see that.
Yeah, they have a two with that offensive line. That's a huge keep on your guys' parks. I remember watching last year with Arthur Smith, and we were looking at him a little bit at times for an OC here and going back, kind of checking some of the tape. And then the outside stretch and all that stuff's what he runs, but he also has a lot of, and maybe it's the offensive line coach's contribution, a lot of extra little subtle advanced details, little things they will do that are kind of extra in positioning, hand placement. You're going to just do this little thing here and then get over to this. And it's atypical of what other teams would do in the blocking, where it's got a little bit more intelligence to it than brawniness to it, I guess is the way that I would try to put it.
And like it's something I was making the comment that I was making on our show this past Tuesday was like, right now, our best runs, our best blocking from our O-line is that outside zone stuff. And so you're pairing your best scheme, the best part of your scheme, with your best back in Bijan. So in that aspect, it makes sense, because as much as we all love Tyler Algier, and we do, especially come fourth quarter, he becomes a closer, in the sense of by the fourth quarter, you don't want to tackle him no more.
Yeah.
And so, but he doesn't have that home run speed. He can't house it from anywhere on the field. But Bijan can, pretty much. And so you're giving your best opportunities with your best plays to your best back, and hoping for, bigger, chunk plays. But I think as the season goes on, they'll start to see, variations, because Bijan is very successful from running under center. He actually looks a lot more comfortable running under center than he does in the pistol or the shotgun.
Yeah, I'm a big guy in giving those running backs like that are that talented the opportunity to do it with the guy under center, because they all say they like him more. And this is a place you're at a good place on the centerpiece of this long debated argument here with the analytic age, where an analytic nerd stat head would be looking at your team right now and he'd say, well, JR, this is why, man. This is why you don't take a running back, man, in the top 12. Because if you look at the yard per carry average, it's a 0.01 difference between the two of them right now, man for man, step for step. And you got Algiers in the 5th round, but you got this guy in the top 12. So love to hear where your stance would be as you're in the heart of the moment of this debate. We debated here too with 2 second-round picks and back-to-back years at the running back position. But where are you at now?
Y'all got 2 of my favorite running backs that came out of the draft, but in Kenneth Walker and Zach Chardonnay. Like when Chardonnay decided to go back to UCLA, man, I was crushed because that year I wanted the Falcons to draft him. But as far as like, do you take the guy like a running back in the first round? There's a lot of evidence that points to no, you don't in this day and age, especially with what you just pointed at. The yards per carry is almost negligible between the two, and you got one in the first round and one in the 5th round. But it's what else that Bijan brings to the table outside of just running. His catching ability is amazing. Like I said, he at any point in time can, break some dude's ankle, make him miss, and, take it for a real big gain, if not all the way to the house. And you can do a lot of different things with him. You even saw, I think, a time or two against Carolina where they had both Algier and Bijan on the field at the same time. So that's a wrinkle that can be different, that can give that versatility. Is he worth a 1st round draft pick? Time will tell. We're in his 2nd season. But I really do feel like he's a special player. And it's not like I said, it's not just the running, it's the catching, it's the pass blocking. There have been times that, Kurt has been able to uncork a, 20 or 30 yard pass simply because Bijan laid a dude out. Like he's having blitzing cornerbacks second guess whether they actually want to, come down, and you see them hesitate just a bit, and it's definitely your buddy Brian Mayer's got that wrong. The Broncos are up 3-0. I have a vested interest in the Saints losing.
Don't we all?
Yeah. But it's like I really wish both of them could lose because I'm not a big fan of Sean Payton either. But anyway,
he makes it easy. He made it easier with time, especially. I did like Bijan. To me, I go if you're the Cowboys, would you take Giante then? Understanding what you've seen with them, and so I'm in the same place. I thought that Bijan's in kind of that place that he's in a special spot, even though you guys are still fully figuring him out. He's been good. It's just getting the full elements of that. I think there are those rare guys that are worth it. I think by and large it's smarter to let things drift more second roundish, but I think that there can't be these hard and fast rules where you just don't do something. There are separating talents. There are game-changing talents. Giante is going to be, I think, at this point within the top 15, even being a 5'9" guy.
Talking about the kid out of Boise,
the Boise State kid.
Yeah, that dude he's going to be a 1st round pick, if not a top 15 pick. Because he is absolutely just tearing it up there and making it look effortless. So he'll definitely be, unless he gets hurt, but that's out of his control per se.
It's the roll of the dice.
Right. So now, okay, y'all started off hot in Seattle, and I have enjoyed. Now, granted, one of them's happening in my division. I don't enjoy that, but I enjoy these quarterback resurgence. The people who've been able to reestablish, their career. You have Baker Mayfield down here in Tampa, and then of course, obviously, Geno Smith up there in Seattle. I hope, like in the offseason, there was like some rumblings about would y'all take a quarterback. Like 6 games in, how's the buzz as far as like Geno is concerned from the fan base?
It's one where I think overall this year he's finally started to win bigger section of the fans over. I've quite honestly kind of been with him for the last couple of years, and this is really, JR, for me, it's as I become a football fan, looking at the sport and trying to understand it better and better. The place I try to look at better and understand at a deeper level going through the years to get a better evaluation, because there seems such simplistic concepts applied to it, as the quarterback position and the outlook of the QB position. I reference this often. My chat's going to hate me reference it again, but I think the modern outlook on it is sort of the superhero outlook, where the Patrick Mahomes, Brady specter has sort of loomed over all these teams and how they look at the position. And that's a way to go. That's a way to find championships. That's a way to go seek out that rarefied player that you can almost never find. But I do think that there's another way to go get it done. I don't think that there's just simply one magical path to getting yourself to a championship. It just, I know recently those guys have won a lot of it. So people look at the last 15 years of data and they're like, Brady Mahomes, Brady Mahomes, Brady Mahomes, as far as the winning championships. But I believe in the supporting cast, and with I know this goes around the world with you on the Geno question, but he's really not had the supporting cast, and yet he's played really well. And it's the part that people have the hardest time, I think, on doing the math with him, is that these past 3 years he's been here, it's not that everything's set up great for him. Awesome offensive coordinator, great offensive line, great defense. Yes, he's got some skill position players to throw to, but even that's got some negatives to it, where there's a high amount of drops or fumbles, some issues that come in addition to that. So I really like Geno. I'm perfectly happy with going with Geno into the future, even at his age, because he's not a guy who's got as much tread taken off his tire, even like a guy like Kirk that's started so many games through all those years. Right. He had all that time where he was barely playing, but you consider how well he's leading the league in passing yardage. He's playing so efficiently. He's not taking sacks. And you got to consider he's doing that with almost a league worst pass protection and an offensive line that run blocks like dog water, kind of.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was looking at y'all's injury report as we get close, and I was like, oh Lord, that was that looks rough. But isn't it like y'all's right tackle giving up like the most pressures, which would be nice for us considering we can't sack anybody to save our lives. But
we're gonna make Ebiketie look great this week, man.
I don't know.
Ebiketie's gonna look all pro this week.
I don't know, man, because that's what we've been exploring these past few weeks. Like we got Baker one time, and you roll into Carolina, which is objectively a bad team, and like you weren't able to get to Dalton like at all. Like you pressured him at the highest pressure rate that we've had thus far this season. We were able to pressure him on 30% of his dropbacks, but still you're not able to like get him to the ground. And so, yeah, I was really kind of hoping that right tackle plays and y'all don't put somebody else in, because
we don't have anybody to put in, I don't think, really, at this point. Maybe Fant next week, but we're gonna have to ride with this. And this is, to your point, I think you've probably faced some pretty stable to good offensive lines overall up until this point. Even that Carolina team, as bad as it is, that look how much resources they dumped in the offensive line this offseason with Damian Lewis, and they made the first $20 million guard a year that we've seen in the sport, and Robert Hunt there at right guard. So not to mention they have a top 10 left tackle pick on that line. So that's not chopped liver. This is going to be some stuff that you can run through. I mean, we've really struggled here all the way around as far as that line goes. And so we've been able to run block a little bit, but it's more of, we can't really do much in the run game until like the third quarter. Then it clicks in, then it really clicks in. And not from the thing of like you're talking about where you sort of slowly beat the team down. It's just sort of, you've been throwing so much, they sort of like, it's that old West Coast offense thing from the 90s, where so you pass to set up the run almost. You end up kind of doing that, but I don't know if it's fully really the plan. It's just you don't run the ball particularly well early on. So
but I mean, okay, again, maybe I'm just I thought y'all's like running attack was, when I was looking at it, I thought it was much better, but you're saying it's more of a second half running game that gets going, because I know both Chardonnay and Walker are both like good out of the backfield as far as like catching passes and with being like the check downs and dump offs, which we've like struggled with. Like, we'll get everybody like corralled, and then it's like a little dump off and goes. We gave up over like well over 100 yards to Chuba Hubbard this past week. So our run blocking or our run stopping has not been very good at all. Like the only thing that our defense is like good at right now is the secondary. With Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons and at the safety position, and even AJ Terrell finally got an interception, which is like the first one since
Mhm.
like I think it was 22. I
Oh,
think
good.
the full season without him having an interception.
Yeah, it's this could I'm thinking this game's gonna probably be a shootout, but this very well could turn into a game where we're both just running it down the throats of each other and going at it. You mentioned the backside of the backfield. Something we have found in recent weeks that's been really helpful is this sort of tunnel screen with the back at a shotgun. So they run that out and in route from the backfield out of shotgun, and then you have your linemen pull up. And especially if you're getting teams dropping to depth in coverage with off coverage corners dropping to depth, there ends up with a lot of space underneath for you to kind of go after. And it's a way for us to manufacture because, like I say, early on the game, the bottom line numbers look good if you just look at the bottom line numbers. But in all these games, if you track it game by game and how you got those numbers, where you got those rushing numbers, it's all really coming mostly in the second half by and large. You just haven't been able to keep, and it's not even a matter of you're creating that sort of draw situation at the line of scrimmage. You're allowing your guys to get pushed back at times. And after times, right, where it's in the kitchen to the running back as he's getting a handoff. They're really great backs. Your assessment on them is correct, by the way. I love our backs. I do. It's just we're not doing enough up front to really help them. Say nothing to Geno on that side of it. So it could be we got like 300, 400 yards rushing in this game collectively.
It wouldn't surprise me. Like from what we gave up to the Bucks on Thursday night on the ground, to then follow it up with another putrid performance from as far as a run stopping standpoint. Our defensive line has not come to play like the way that we thought they were going to. They invested quite a bit in our defensive line over like this offseason as far as like draft picks with a second round pick, a fourth
Say
round
his
pick.
name. How do you say that last name on that
Group
second pick?
Oro.
Huh? I couldn't get that.
Yeah, it's Aurora Row, basically. We just call him
I
Root.
never get. I did. I scouted him. I could never land it. You landed
No.
it well. You had some runs at it, but I gave up trying. I just call him Root.
Yeah, and so far, like the kid we got out of Oregon hasn't even taken a snap yet. Brandon Dorless.
Oh,
So, like he's been inactive, and now one of our defensive ends, Lorenzo Carter, is probably going to be out with a concussion. So I'm wondering if this will be the week that we get him up and going. But now this will be the second game back from our best run stopping linebacker Nate Landman. He was on IR for the first part of after the first game, so he was on IR until the Carolina game, and you could tell that it was his first game back.
yeah.
Still played well, but not as effective as we have seen him in the past. So I'm hoping that he gets his legs back under him for this game because, like I said, we're going to need it.
Is Anderson playing?
I see he didn't practice today, and we're at Thursday, so now tomorrow's really going to tell. If he doesn't practice tomorrow, then he's out.
It's a
I
hammy
don't.
with him and both, and him and Simmons both have little hammies they're dealing with,
Well,
right?
Anderson's his knee. It was
Oh,
he banged his knee up on the special teams play against the Saints. And hasn't been back since, and that which was late in the game. But yeah, Simmons' hamstring seems to be okay. They even said at the end of that game that the feeling was that he could have went back in if we really needed him to, but by that point we were up 18, and there was no reason to put him back out there. But he's been limited, but like he got elevated to limited today, so I'm assuming that tomorrow is either going to be limited or full participant.
I liked him a lot coming out of Montana State. He was a fun prospect, even though that's
Oh, yeah.
not a college that produces a lot of NFL guys. You could see that he'd run around there, hit, and he could do a lot of different things. I think they played some offensively, didn't they, at Montana State a little bit? And they throw him to the off.
They might have.
I think he started offensive or something like that.
That might have been what it was, but I know the combination of him and Jesse Bates has been like awesome for us.
I've liked how you put the defense together because you guys haven't done necessarily just through the draft. You've augmented, but I like even the Judon trade was I know he's not gotten you a lot for it, but you can see the intelligence behind the move itself. Not high cost, low cost, bring a guy in, capable rusher.
And he's played well. Like he may not be like putting up like the sack numbers per se, but he's very active in the run game, and he's been a impactful player like the whole of the season. So I'm been happy with that. Now we need another guy. Like we were hoping at this point that Ebiketie would have stepped up more consistently. Now he did have his best game against Carolina, so maybe he is starting to turn a corner or put it together in this new defense, because this makes the third defense he's had to learn since he's been in the league. Like, so he went from Dean Pease to Ryan Nielsen now to Jimmy Lake, and which is a far departure from what we were running last year.
Husky fans would tell you that he just keeps getting downgraded, because Jimmy Lake's not a man that carries a very good reputation out in these.
No, he does not. He was a guy that I was not super high on when we hired him, but I mean, he's been a close friend with Raheem Morris from all the way back in their Tampa days. So you've got a pretty good brain trust on the defensive side of the ball with Raheem Morris, Jimmy Lake, and Jerry Gray, who longtime secondary guy in Green Bay.
Oh yeah.
So
he's been around.
I like what they do. It just hasn't necessarily produced the results. I like the 5-1 penny front that they run with the mugged up linebackers. They do a lot of sim pressures, and you don't know who's coming. It's a lot of post snap adjustments, and post snap rotations from the back end, trying to confuse the quarterback. It just hasn't necessarily, like it did the first few weeks, against Pittsburgh and against Philly. But the last few weeks has started to really get exposed some, so they need to tighten that ship up.
Yeah, it's sometimes this is the way it goes. I mean, our defense is no better shape, so you guys at least had some performance. Ours has been just miserable all the way around. Ebiketie's interesting too, because there was a draft day article that came out the year he was drafted, and we were right behind you guys in that draft. We took Mafe, but we wanted Ebiketie, so it sometimes shows you that better to be lucky than good sometimes, because you guys grabbed him. We got Mafe. Mafe's obviously, I think, ascended now, maybe being, but he's also had gone through some different defensive coordinators too. I think he's just at this point a bit better player than, not that Ebiketie's bad, but that we've got on the right side of that one, and not necessarily it was by a purposeful approach.
I was going to say, I was down at the Senior Bowl that year that Boy Mafe was down there, because the Senior Bowl happens in Mobile, so that's only a few hour drive from from my house. So I try to get down there as much as I can, and he was a guy that I was really wanting. When we took Ebiketie, and I was like, okay, that's fine. He was still highly thought of as well as Boy Mafe, but watching what Mafe was able to do down there in Mobile, y'all got a good one. And then you add in this past year, now you got Byron Murphy talking about oh, they're gonna feel me, and I'm like,
this is gonna be one of those games you're gonna be dealing with from your chat. If you guys have a hard time stopping the run, and then Murphy goes off, you know where I'm going with this, right? We've all been in that place from this standpoint. You'll never hear the end of it on the.
Oh yeah, no, I've already told my people, as far as I said, y'all better hope the three big pass rushers from this draft don't really get going. Yeah. I said, because you'll never hear the end of it from me, because a few years back we took Tack McKinley when we could have had TJ Watt. And exactly. It's just come on, guys.
It didn't make any sense why so many teams slept on TJ coming out of Wisconsin either, especially with the pedigree that was there. I mean, usually pedigree's worth something, and it was it almost worked against him to some degree.
I don't know. It was I think it was initially his size, but at the time we had Vic Beasley, who obviously had flamed out, but I was really envisioning pairing those two guys and having two just fire breathers coming off the edge. But they went with the bigger guy to, I think, complement Beasley, and neither one of those guys are in Atlanta. Beasley doesn't even play in the NFL, and Tack McKinley's riding the bench up in with the Jets. So
he's played with 15 different teams or something. And boy, TJ on that fast surface there at Atlanta for a career.
Man, my God, that was
look out if he was there on that. That was for week one, right? He was killing in week one on that.
He single-handedly ruined that game.
He's done it
us.
to us too. He's done it to
Yeah,
us too. I mean, he's legit. He is a problem coming off the edge. It was like
big
Geno
time.
last year at home was just the whole game, dodging him right up, and that's right after the snap. It's like he's got to do that. Here comes TJ's hand. Oh, there's
Yep.
TJ swapping by, and it's every single snap. It was going. Oh my God, give him some help.
That's it. That's it. Well, y'all have not really like built much of an offensive line. I know, like,
Oh, it's awful.
yeah, and it's been that way for a while because, like, even with Russ there, it was that man ran for his life the whole time.
Well, it's
Yes.
back to that quarterback conversation, right? Because everybody pays,
Yep.
but everybody's paying for what they think that Mahomes, Brady, but you're not getting that performance. But what you have to do with this, I think you'd agree, JR, is that you eventually have to, if you're going to pay that quarterback, you're going to go lighter. Sometimes you can do that on defense. We chose to do it because we had a defensive-minded head coach to the line. So there was a purposefulness to it, I think, where they said Russell can scramble away from bad pass protection and Marshawn Lynch can ram his head through a hole, even if there isn't one there. So that's where we'll go light and we'll strengthen everything else up. And I could understand it at the time, but you're absolutely on point with this in that it's been 10 years of this being a problem for us. And it really comes down to I'm working on a video for my channel right now in regards to this very same thing. There's 3 pathways you have to making a great offensive line: draft, free agency, or via trade. And
Yep.
what we've done is we've stuck in the draft mode for the last 3 years, and we've refused to do anything as far as spending substantial money or going out there and making a significant trade. And it's limited how you can build it. And our prospects haven't developed the cumulative of all these picks you tried to make instead to make it go that way. You haven't had the development that's come through on those guys. Cross is legit. He's been great, but he's been the only one.
Right. I mean, okay. I'm hoping I don't mix this up. Didn't y'all have Abram Lucas as well?
We did. We still do. Lucas,
I
after
thought
a
he.
really great first year,
Okay.
a knee injury thing got him. So he's been just.
Okay. Okay.
The team tells us he'll be back, but it's like one of those mystery box things where they won't tell us the injury, they won't tell us the surgery. He's coming back into undefined spot exactly. So that's got us all kind of like hopeful, maybe some point. But it's been about a year and a half.
Y'all, this past offseason, y'all were in the same boat as far as like y'all moved off of longtime coach Pete Carroll and brought in Mike McDonald, who's well thought of out of the Ravens. How's that gone? Do you feel like is he just don't have the guys yet per se, or like schematically, like he was one of the like next defensive wonderkins.
Yeah.
So like how has that transitioned into the head coaching?
I think overall it's good. I think that I think it's hard to make any early assessment at this point for a guy that is the youngest NFL head coach and a first-time head coach. That's the epitome of a guy that you want to give a good amount of room and rope to let him have that thing come in. And I think your point about not having exactly the personnel that fits to his scheme is an appropriate one. I think both Carroll and him want to run a physical unit, but I think with Carroll, so much of what he wanted to run was, four-man fronts, drop every back into zone. So your personnel versus like you talked about with what your team's trying to do with more of the simulated pressures, more of the stack boxes, more confusion, more changing of coverages pre to post snap. We were on average every year around 32nd in the NFL at our changing of coverages pre to post snap under Carroll. And of course, with him, he didn't run a litany of coverages at that, right?
No, I was about to say that we dealt with that with Dan Quinn down here. It's that we're going to run this one thing and we're going to do it really, really, really well. And unfortunately, Quinn could never build the. I mean,
that's right.
Hey, it's real hard to get a Cam Chancellor and a Earl Thomas. Like that's difficult to pull off, and he never was able to.
It frustrates the hell out of me because it's one that sort of it almost looks down upon defensive players in a way that they're like stupid or dumber than offensive players, because offense can run all of this complexity, do all of these different iterations. They've got a play call that's a Bible long when they go to speak it out. Yet defenses have to be in a coverage that's the same to pre to post snap. Can't be having them think a lot on play. Can't have them reading and react to stuff prior to snap and making calls and adjustments off of that. Like everything has to be well ordained and organized for them to just be able to function. And I don't agree with that. I think there's been a lot of room for the defense to take big steps forward in the NFL. It's one reason why I think it's starting to take some of the land back here from the offense in recent years, and that you're seeing better defenses. Is that I think that this is not mine, by the way, but I agreed with somebody that put this out there. I think in a lot of ways that cover 3 defense kind of stilted the defensive evolution of the sport for 10 years there a bit, because so many teams adopted that scheme and it was built on utter simplicity. What you see is what you get. We're just going to play fast. And now you're starting to see defenses take some of the rope because the offenses are like, I don't know what I'm seeing prior to the snap. I don't know what the hell my read's
Well, I
supposed to
mean,
be.
you have to do something because if these offenses are going to like put people into motion and do these short motions or cheat motions, whatever you want to call them, you're having guys like Kyle Pitts, who is a tight end but really is a wide receiver, like doing things that they like. You have the Sean McVays who run a lot of 12 personnel principles out of 11 personnel, and then you have us where we do run a decent amount of like 11 personnel concepts, but out of 12 personnel. So like when you have all this complexity about what you're showing, pre-snap to once it actually gets rolling, the defenses have to have a counter to it. And the counters have to be that, there's disguised coverages. Like you go out there and it looks like, cover two, and then, you roll a guy out to where it's quarters or it's, cover six or whatever. I don't know if you've ever heard of Cody Alexander
I have.
on, okay. I follow him on Twitter, and he put out a chart the other day that, it was earlier this morning, about 8 hours ago, that, Seattle's running a disguise rate of, they're 12th in the league at 32.1% through week 6, as far as like their disguise rates. And Atlanta is at, third in the league at 41.7. So they're doing what they can to confuse to present a different picture once, especially with the play action game the way it is.
Yeah.
If you can get the quarterback to turn his back, and when he turns back around, it looks completely different.
Mm.
Now you have hopefully an advantage.
I think too that other defense was built a lot on how offenses were comprised in the 80s and 90s, being that they took more shots down the field, and so much of the defense is built upon getting the offense to become impatient, and that they'll eventually will become impatient and take that shot. Whereas modern offenses will say, hey, if you're going to give me the 7-yard completion, I'll take it all day long and I'll just slowly bleed you to death. And that's where you've got to adjust off that and be willing to take more stuff away, and at the risk at times of the deep shot over the top that you're trying to protect against in that other defense by and large. So it's,
yeah, we were talking about like analytics earlier. There's a strong theory that by getting just one explosive play in a drive, it ramps up your chances from actually scoring a touchdown. With explosive plays, being 10 plus yard runs, 15 plus yard passes. Like the more of those that you can get, and that's where you were talking about where defenses were just trying to limit those, because if they can make you drive the full 90 yards or 75 yards, if we're talking about back in the day where if you took a knee in the end zone, you came out to the 25. So that was a full 75 yards that you had to try to run. And the more snaps you take, the better chance I have of getting the ball away from you.
right.
Which is,
No,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead. I was
going to say, which is, kind of what I was saying earlier. That was probably the only like real like plus that our defense has right now, I think, is we're doing pretty good in the turnover margins.
Well, that's my thing is I'm a guy that twists off that old to the new, where I say, take your risks, take your chances. If you give up a big play over the top and a quick score, that's not actually the worst thing. I think more of the worst thing early in a game, first, second quarter, is those long 9-minute drives, 15-play drives, third downs converted on end over and over again. That tires your defense out. That gets yourself in that perilous point. Whereas, okay, the quick score happens, but your defense still comes out the other end of fresh. And I'm not saying you give up shots over the top, but you take those chances and risks, and what you get is what you just talked about on the other side of that, which is the turnovers, which is sometimes the manufactured sacks when you get the free pass rusher coming down. And I don't know if you guys saw this as well, but I thought one of the great ironies with this old style defensive carol at the end was too, that you talk about those shot plays at 15 yards. What would happen? Linebackers drop in space, corner drop in space. They throw to the back underneath, like you have an Alvin Kamara you face a lot. So they throw to Alvin Kamara there in the flat on a 7-yard route, and then he takes it for 17 yards. So the irony being is that by which you were trying to prevent in the first place within this defense, conceptually, you're not actually accomplishing.
Right. And that's where I think the counterpunch to the modern defense is trying to force a defense to get into a heavier box. And like like Arthur Smith was on the right track. He just unfortunately backed the wrong guys as his signal callers.
Yeah.
But the idea of I'm going to run the ball, I'm going to make you, uh, you know, condense and then take my shots. You know,
Yeah.
it's an old school thought process, but it's one that is counteracting the light and because what you used to have linebackers that are 250 pounds. Now you have like
Yeah.
most linebackers are 220.
With the
You know,
cover two shell on the
right,
backside, so
right,
no box safety anymore.
exactly. And like, yeah, the box safety is just about dead. I mean, like look here in Atlanta, like Justin Simmons and Jesse Bates are
Two free safety.
basically free safeties. I mean, don't get me wrong, they'll come up and stick their nose in it. They're not afraid of
Yeah.
that. Their calling card is more coverage and um, housing or like making plays and getting picks.
Yeah, well, you talk about with those lighter linebackers was absolutely on point. With I've seen these guys come out at 225 now. I mean, legit at the combine, they're just like F it. Let me get my 40 time down to 4.45, and I'll come in at 227, and no team's going to ding me for that. So they're getting lighter and lighter, and then you have these things we run. You're going to be able to maybe take advantage of this week, which is what I call these 2-man fronts, where you get a 3 tech, you get a 1 tech, and then you got 2 wide 9s on the edge. And so then you end up with that real natural big space that exists in those gaps. And then it calls upon the linebackers and safeties on the back end to really fill correctly. And if they don't, if they're off an inch, if one guy's off his gap integrity, it's toast. The play's gone. I mean, last week on that Niner play, the backbreaker they had on an 8-yard run, we're in a 3-4 defense. We know they're going to run. There's no chance they're passing there really. And yet they were able to still break through because the gap integrity was shot with one guy basically. And that's all it sort of takes when you're going to be that light of the box.
Oh yeah, that's the deal with that. Idealistically, the penny front that they try to run is to make it harder to run on. We haven't seen that yet, but that's the idea. Is
Yeah.
that it's supposed to clog up the lanes and make it harder to run on. But and that's why I've said earlier it was kind of nice to get Nate Landman back because he pushes like more towards that old school at 240, 245. He can really stick his nose in there and shut down the run. So I'm really hoping that he rounds more back into form this week because we're going to need it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be, I think, the key for this game, man, on who runs the ball better. Maybe very well the team that comes out of this game, brass tacks, any other kind of stat being brought into play. That one may be the big determinant factor. Well, I know we'll get you out here in just a sec here soon, and we got a time rundown. We got a couple donos, if you don't mind, real quick through this.
For sure.
Feeding More Seahawks, thank you for the $2 donation. He says the 2012 playoffs still sting. Boy, there's a lot in the Hawk fan base that feel like we got through your Falcons. We had the Niners dead to rights, and who knows what happens at that point.
Oh yeah, no, that 2012, I really feel like had we been able to get through the Niners, that I think we would have fared up better against the Baltimore Ravens on that one. And it would have been so nice to win a Super Bowl in New Orleans. That would have been fun.
Yeah, that would have been pretty cool. That was a hell of a team you guys had. And, we talk about that defense getting hit. I mean, you guys at the end, I think you had 25 seconds left and Ryan ran up the field. And what was he doing? Really just attacking the cover 3 principles on those throws up the field there in that moment, in cutting routes, middle of the field, and bing, bam, boom, you're out the field because you can predict where the coverage is going to be on that play. But that was a hell of a game, man. That was a hell of a playoff game that day.
It was that.
Sanchez, thank you for celebrating 24 months as a Hawks Nest member. I appreciate you for that. Says Seahawks come to Atlanta and I'm not able to go. Brutal.
It is brutal.
We do have some Hawk fans in there. I'm not saying we're going to take the stadium over, but our contingent will be in there. Though your stadium's been seeming kind of off the hook this year. What kind of?
Oh yeah, we've done. I mean, as we said, like as much as I hate to say it, we are a bandwagon city. There's a lot to do in Atlanta. There's a lot that goes on with the Braves, the Hawks, like Atlanta United, and that's just the sports. Like then you got UGA up the road. So with that being said, if you're not winning, they're not coming.
Yeah.
There's and like you add in like the price of tickets. They're not cheap, and so people aren't going to pay that money. Not down here. They're not die-hard faithfuls in that sense. But you start winning, you start putting a decent product out there, and yes, we will get loud, we will get ruckus, and unfortunately, we will curb stomp people's heads in the stadium.
Oh, look out.
I don't know
Oh,
if you
look
saw
out.
that video or not. That was horrible.
Oh, there you go. Geez, I didn't. We're luckily we haven't had any bad videos coming out of Lumen yet with
Oh,
people
good.
fighting. But boy, I'll tell you what, down in San Francisco every week they're beating the hell out of each other down there, and sometimes it's niner on niner crime.
Oh
Where
yeah,
they're like,
no,
you guys
it's
are on the
ridiculous.
same team here. You guys got that right? Like, die, die. Just red colors flowing every which way. Just don't know what's up, which way's down. It's wild. Randall McDaniel, thank you for the $5 donation. He says, ask my man how big the Atlanta versus NOLA rivalry is. I think it
All right.
flies under the radar for a lot of fans. Top
Okay,
5 rivalry in the league.
let me paint a picture for you here, bud. Let me paint a
All
picture
right.
for you. My in-laws, my wife's family, are season ticket holders for the Saints. And when my little girl was born, they made a joke about, oh, we'll send a Saints onesie. And I straight up and down told them, I said, unless you want it burned, don't send no, like, I won't even put a fleur de lis of any kind in this house. Like, it's not happening.
That's
You know?
yours to determine, by the way. They don't have no, I don't care what there's a family or
That's
not.
right.
That's your direct lineage
That's
to
right.
determine that outcome. They have no factor, no say on that.
Right. But no, it is and then you add in, and I hate to say it like this, like you add in what transpired around Hurricane Katrina. A lot of New Orleans transplants ended up here in Atlanta. There was a lot of people that when that hurricane happened, we set up like, places for them to go and things like that. And so you have a big contingency of Saints fans that are here in Atlanta, and it doesn't help. No, it is a huge rivalry that is underrated. Like, I want the Saints to lose every possible game, and it's a good year if we can beat them twice. And I don't care what happens the rest of it. It's it is definitely for real.
Well, the good news too is that they are in this battle you're having between them, and I know it's gone back and forth at times in recent years, but at the end of the day with them, they are to me, one of the kind of joke organizations in the league and how they run their cap situation on a
Oh,
yearly
dude, yeah.
basis, and how that will forever prevent them from doing anything.
Oh yeah, we make that comment yearly. Like, okay, like how are y'all going to, um, like what BS are y'all going to pull off this time to move cap space or all the, they're still, if I'm not mistaken, they're still paying Drew Brees, and
Yeah, it's
he hasn't been there in what 4 years or so.
yeah,
At
it's
least
I just look at it and I go, I have a theory on this. There's an NFL organization finds itself in 4 states, man. You're rebuilding, you're ascending, you're in between, and you don't necessarily go from ascending to in between. In between's like purgatory, and then you got elite. You're contending, and you got to know what type of team you are to make the proper decisions in the right moment. And to me, the
correct.
Saints talk themselves every year into that. Hey, we're right on the edge of being elite. No, you're in between, and then you make these moves that only further embed you into being in that in-between state like they have. And I don't know why they won't bite the bullet. Just bite the bullet, man. The run's over with. Peyton's gone. Breeze is gone, man.
Oh yeah, exactly. Payton's gone, Breeze is gone, but Mickey Loomis still is like convinced that they're going to be, contender. You go out and you get Derek Carr, and that was kind of a disaster for them last year. Started off okay this year, but has quickly went downhill, and now he's hurt, which I don't want to see anybody hurt, but um, that they when you go out and get Carr, it's signaling that, oh, okay, we still think we're in this. I'm not a huge fan of Dennis Allen. I don't think he's a very good head coach. I wonder if he makes it, through this year.
Better coordinator than coach, probably.
Yeah, and I think it's the same with Arthur Smith. I think he's showing to be, even though it is kind of funny how like Pittsburgh fans are complaining about the same things that we complained about the past few years. So maybe he isn't as good of a coordinator as I
It's always
think.
hard with it. I think Stefanski is going to get a little bit of this in Cleveland in the long term, which is that there are those times with those coaches in those certain spots, and it's not necessarily reflective on Atlanta's front office not giving him those guys. I mean, sometimes there aren't the guys available. That Desmond Ritter draft with all those QBs, it was like, dear God, run for the hills. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's the way it goes. It plays out that way. And so there is those times those coaches just, okay, maybe they did fail in the situation, but also did they ever get their guy versus some of those other coaches who get into situations where they've just got a guy that lands right in their lap and the stage is set for them to really go out there and find success.
It's a lot of combination on like, and there's a lot of luck involved. as far as, does a QB land in the right situation? Does the coach get a chance to get his QB? Like look at the Lions. When they traded for Jared Goff, it was like nobody thought that was going to turn into any much of anything.
Yeah.
And here they are, like one of the best teams in the NFL.
Yeah.
So who knows how that stuff ends up shaking out.
It's far from a science.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
quite the opposite direction. It's much more roll of the dice if we have to pick one or the other on that. We'd like to think it's
Exactly.
science, but it's much more like, come on, sevens.
That's
Here we
it.
go.
That's it. Like that's when people like talk about like, oh, this guy's a draft bust. I'm like, it's really hard to like say that. Like it's really hard to like you take Geno, like it's a
Yeah.
perfect example. Like he flames out in New Jersey, ends up somewhere else before he landed with y'all. I'm blanking on where he was.
So he was
Uh,
backing up Rivers, backing up Manning, and then backing up Wilson. Those
that's
were
what it
the
was.
three
Yeah.
successive spots. But I got a question for you. Would you think that spot with the Jets, if I was to say this isn't an advantageous position for Geno at this first spot, walking in, start from day one, Jets team with no real playmakers or running backs. Rex Ryan is your head coach, so you have a defensive-minded head coach, which is not exactly the best for the
It's not
development of
great
the quarterback position.
for a young QB now.
Yeah, no. A man who I think literally put Mark Sanchez tattoo on him at one point, right? He got his tattoo.
That guy was, man, he's so weird. So weird.
That was one where you went. That's when you
he's
just try not to think about too deeply, right? Where you're just like,
him
oh my
or Buddy
God.
Ryan. They're not Buddy
Yeah,
Ryan, his brother Rob.
Rob.
Rob
They're
Ryan was
all of them are like, hey, Dad too. Dad's on the sidelines punching guys. Like
yeah,
they're just
right.
lively bunch. But what would you think on that? That's where I was looking at that. Is like he didn't get another shot after that. Really, he's backing up. Eli Manning situation. Remember McAdoo tried to start him for one game, and the whole New York fans revolted on that thing. He wasn't going to get past Rivers. He wasn't going to get past Wilson. Sometimes these guys, as well, to your point on this, don't always get that second shot as a turnaround.
They don't.
They get labeled and they thrown in the trash heap, and it's done.
And I really hope that, like a kind of point I brought up earlier, is like I really hope that there is a second look at this because of guys like Jared Goff, because of guys like Geno Smith, because of guys like Baker Mayfield, who have been able to like resurrect their career. Now you've got just as many like Marcus Mariota flamed out here. Zach Wilson is with Sean Payton backing up Bo Nix, he was inactive tonight, so I don't think he was backing up Bo Nix, but it's just going to be opportunity. I think it was the next Sam Darnold out there with the Vikings, the 5-0 Vikings.
Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, they he said their coach Kevin O'Connell was like, sometimes I think it's the organizations that fail these young coaches or young QBs, not the other way around. And I think that there's a lot of validity to that. And maybe it will start because Joe Flacco and Matt Ryan were the quarterbacks that kind of flipped the script.
Yeah.
Because up to that point, you drafted a guy and he sat, like an Aaron Rodgers or what have you, and but Matt Ryan and Joe Flacco both came in and were able to have immediate success.
Yeah.
And I think that changed everybody's opinion of like, oh crap, okay, well, this is something we can do. Well, as we've seen, like, no, you can't. not everybody's the same.
They're really not. And there are times you can do it, but you better make sure you got your supporting cast. And if there's any question, if you're not sure about your coaching, if there's any of those, then you should be leaning into letting him sit. I don't like, for instance, the Patriots who had a plan of attack with Drake May, and then they got kind of pushed by their locker room, which is, I think, silly, because I'd be looking right back at that locker room as a coach and going, okay, guys, he's better. If he goes out there and he's better than Jacoby Brissett, that does what for us this year?
Right.
What is that? Where does that take us? Is this going to the promised land?
Not very good.
Yeah, you guys need to trust in my ability to understand what's best for this kid's development. It's not to throw him to the wolves right now, especially if he gets broken, because all those same players in that locker room will be doing this move.
Yeah, right. Yep. Yeah, if they end up ruining Drake May, now they didn't win, but at least he had a decent showing, with his 3 touchdown passes. So he showed you something.
I love Drake. I do. The thing goes, I do think with that line you're putting him behind and watching some of the hits Brissett was taking this year, including in our game, I just go, you didn't get the line right. That's your guys' fault. That shouldn't be on May. You didn't prepare the situation correctly enough for him to have the success. It's setting him up for failure.
I was thinking, like, they had a ton of cap space because that was part of the Judon thing. Like, he's like, we have the most cap space in in the league, why can't I get paid? Which is how he ended up here in Atlanta, which I'm grateful for. But still, like why haven't? Okay, fine. You're going to bring in a young quarterback. You need to like solidify that line.
Bill got him bit on the butt a couple years ago because remember they went heavy into free agency once Tom left and got a Super Bowl. So Bill was like, let Dan for torpedoes. Let's go spend in free agency, and that stuff didn't work. So I bet they got a bit gun shy on that a bit.
Yeah,
like,
more than likely.
Can't come back on this one now. So a couple there's don't knows here just real quick. Feedmore Seahawks, he's got a question for you on this one. This might be a sore subject. He says, I'm curious, who threw the Super Bowl, Kyle or Dan?
Kyle. Definitely. Like full on Kyle. And look, he even threw his own Super Bowl. There are times that as much as I enjoy like Kyle Shanahan's like offensive genius, sometimes he can get too full of himself. And
Agreed.
So and if you really want to know who messed it up, it was Devontae Freeman, like whiffing on that block. But either way, yeah, it was, I put it squarely on Kyle, especially considering, he I guess Bill Belichick bribed him with Garoppolo and to give him the playbook for a night, which is always a conspiracy theory that we have rolling around down here.
Hey, Bill's dastardly like that. I wouldn't put it past him. So if there's one coach you'd go, it would be thinking about it on that level. He'd be the guy. And it's become a meme for 49er fans at this point with Kyle. So now they have your Super Bowl, they think it. And I agree with you. I think that especially that second half, not going back to McCaffrey after you literally went through the regular season, riding on him until the wheels fell off. And the wheels were still kind of on it, but then you suddenly forget that he's there in that second half. I think they had like 9 straight passes or something like that without a run back to me. You go, what are you doing, Kyle?
Yep.
What are you doing?
Yep. There's times where he just gets too in his own head.
Yeah. And now you got to wonder too if he's going to start to build on him because now it's become a thing, right? It
Right
isn't just
now,
this happened. It's become like I've had this happen every single time in this position. That hand's going to be shaking if you got a 10-point lead in the playoffs. Say nothing to being in the Super Bowl again.
That's right.
Phoebe, thank you for another $2 dono. Says 49ers are the only team in the West I hate.
I was gonna ask like who is like y'all's rival? Like, is there like the one team on the schedule that like gives you like angst, or like if we can just beat them, I'm feeling pretty good. Does the Seahawks faithful like really have a?
It's a bit hard.
West.
Well, it's hard a little bit because we made that transition from the AFC West back in the the 90s or whatever, right? So you were AFC West for all those years. You had rivalries with those teams, and then this stuff's been new now. It's really the Niners. Cardinals are just not good enough, to take seriously.
Cardinals have got to be like y'all's Panthers or our Panthers.
Yeah, it is. It's like every once in a while they're all right, but most part they're kind of a joke. And the Rams, like even their fans aren't fans of the team in LA, right? Like they're all Raider fans. So it's hard to take them seriously when, half of St. Louis is out on the team when you move them. And then LA, to me, I think it's almost, whether it's the Chargers or the Rams, in my opinion, it's going to be only a matter of time before one of those teams is probably out of LA because they've not been able to make one franchise work there in the past ever. And now you're going to make 2 at the same time as transplants work. I don't see it happening. Maybe the Rams will stay, but the Chargers probably end up back in San Diego when it's all said and done at some point. But the Niners, their fan base, their whole, we Super Bowls back in the 90s and keep trying to point you to that without any recent success. They've gotten Super Bowls. They've had our number too, so that hasn't helped. But they're the rival.
Well, then you have you have Richard Sherman who played, for y'all and then finished out his career in San Francisco. So that probably doesn't help per se.
No, there's a lot of anger towards Richard for doing that, and
Oh, dude, yeah, we have with it was Curtis Lofton, he was our linebacker, and then he went and played for the Saints. I was like, "What are you doing? Go sign."
They do that. They get petty. Those players will get petty about it, man.
They will.
They'll have an axe to grind on that stuff where it's like, bro, we paid you. You haven't been up at this spot, and I don't care. You should have shown some loyalty, but you've been barely on the field first. I don't care. I'm going to go over here and whoop your butt now twice a year.
That's it. Yep.
Okay. We'll see you at the Ring of Honor in 15 years, I guess, buddy.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Oh. But no, it was definitely seeing the Saints have any modicum of success gets my blood boiling. I want them to lose and go down in flames every game.
Well, I think they're coming back to earth this year. I think it is with you and Tampa Bay, the two that are going to be duking
I
this
think
one out.
I think
Um,
so.
One more quick question to you before we get to just your final assessment on a score. I always like to get predictions. I know some people don't like them, but I'd love to hear where you are at on it. Should your Falcons, if they continue to be right up there at the top of the division, press for a trade deadline deal? And if there's one that were to occur, which one would you like to see happen?
For me, we broached this topic on Tuesday, and to me, if there's anybody like big name wise, uh, I would love to get Max Crosby. Like if the Raiders
Ooh,
are
I
done,
love
like
that move for you guys.
if they're fire sailing and getting rid of Devontae Adams and Max Crosby come out today and said, "Hey, I'm not here for a rebuild," kind of deal, like voicing his displeasure. I really feel like Antonio Pierce is like a lame duck head coach. I think Mark Davis got pressured into hiring him by the locker room. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like he's gone after this year, which isn't necessarily his fault because again, you're dealing with Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. Like,
Right, that quarterback. Yeah.
what are you expecting? And then you just traded away Devontae Adams. So, um, if somehow we could pull off a Max Crosby trade, that would be like awesome to me. Like to put him on the other side of Matt Judon and get the pass rush really cranked up would be
A
um
first, Ebiketie, and a fourth.
I'd do it in a heartbeat. In a
Love it. I
heartbeat.
love
I
I
like
love your aggression, man. I
Yeah,
do.
I would like at this point, Ebiketie, like I said, hasn't necessarily shown you any kind of consistency. He's shown you to be a decent rotational guy, and that's about
Mm-hmm.
it. Um, uh, I would be willing to like short of like 2 first round picks.
Ooh, I like
For
it.
because Max Crosby's still a young guy. Like
He's awesome. He's
right,
legit awesome. He's in that
exactly
same Watt type territory of place of
right.
impact he brings to the field.
And we haven't had that guy since John Abraham.
Yeah.
So I would definitely now more realistic would be like repairing uh Matt Judon with Zadarius Smith, uh,
Mm-hmm.
putting them back
Nothing.
together. Both of those guys are on like the twilight of their career.
Yeah.
So and the Browns are a dumpster fire, and they are definitely having to move some money to accommodate that ridiculous contract that they gave Deshaun Watson, and so something like that. Like I would really love to move for an edge rusher.
I love that deal for you too, because I think it's what we see from Super Bowl teams recently. Like the Rams had to go down this road a bit. Is that there's a bit of a you'd like to think you can build your roster all in the preseason, off season, and whatnot, and have it set. But it's really now the price of doing business to get to that Super Bowl and get over the top is to go make that move down the line. Niners last year with Chase Young to help them out. Chiefs have done it as well at times with Kadarius Toney a couple of years ago, where long term that didn't help them, but it helped them in the short term making that kind of move. And I love it from a standpoint. I think it's just what you have to do now. It's the nature of the beast here if you want to be to that team.
Last year we tried to make a move for Montez Sweat, but Chicago came in with a higher draft pick and kind of cut our knees out. So I definitely think that they're making phone calls, and we'll see what that leads to.
Well, not bad as if it is a Darius Smith, that'll be a good enough rusher for you. But I love it as far as if you get the kid out of with Vegas, or even shoot Myles Garrett's maybe potentially as another guy you hear float, not to you guys, but maybe being floated out there as well as in ether. So we'll see. Well, give me a score prediction on this game if you could for me, JR. Give me a final how you think this one plays out.
I think that barring Geno throwing picks, that this is going to be a closer game than Carolina. So I feel like, somewhere around in the 28-24, obviously I lean towards the Falcons.
Mm-hmm.
But it may be one of those, final drive, like get in field goal range kind of situation to, take the lead or, try to get a last minute touchdown. I think there's a good chance that it's going to be back and forth. They do seem to be similar in what they want to do stylistically, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I think we have the edge in the quarterback area, but I mean Geno is throwing for more yards than Kirk, so we'll see how that translates. But yeah, I think a close contest, 24-24, 26, 24, 28, something of that nature.
Got in the same place or right around the same kind of place myself. We just haven't been playing well enough at this point either. Yeah, you guys are playing better. We're not playing as well. We need to get healthier. We're coming in this a little bit more limping than you guys are. I know you got a couple injuries, but we're really, especially defensively, struggling. So it's just hard to pull it off on the road like that when you're dealing with not playing well and then you're undermanned as well on top of it. So I think it's a fair outlook on your part from a scoreboard. I want to thank you, JR, for doing this and down with me on this hour. Folks, do me this favor, hit this like button. But beyond that, go down the description link. Right below, you'll go find a link directly to Pound for Pound Atlanta on here on YouTube. So just click that link. It sends you right to the page. Sub on up, please. He's been kind enough. These guys are running around this during the season. I'm telling you, I can attest to this. It's left, right, left, up, down. You're spinning. So he's really kind to take his time away here with us and sit down with us and chop it up a bit. I really appreciate you. And please do go show him that love as well.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you reaching out and having me on. It was a lot of fun. I don't normally do this, like in a sense of like do the whole behind enemy lines type deal. I've had a handful of like not so great experiences, people just wanting to like argue. This has been very pleasant. So I definitely appreciate that.
I love talking ball, JR. I really do, and I love having the perspective of fans like yourself that are in as the depths I am, and what you have as far as a view is it can't compare to anything that you're going to go out there and read line. So it's just where I'm in hog heaven and doing this as far as being able to chop it up in these ways. I'd love to have you on again. You never know too, even after this game, you never know what this kind of NFC as it is wide open. We might be playing again. So might have to, have to reach out again here if it goes down like that in that way, but
there
thank
you go. Yeah, man. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you as well. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be back on Sunday with the game here, and we'll see how it plays out until that time. Please do again sub up over there to JR's channel, Pound for Pound Atlanta, down below here in the link. JR, thank you again for jumping on the show. Folks, we'll be back soon. But until that time, please don't you forget, go Hawks.
There it is.